is Everything Rugby League, a podcast for fans of the sport everywhere.
Can you believe it?
Each week, Keith and Lewis cover news and insights from the game's grassroots to the NRL and around the world.
And welcome to another episode of Everything Rugby League, the podcast. As with all weeks, I've got my co-host tuning in from England here, Lewis. But before I cross to you, Lewis, I just want to get your thoughts on the breaking news that Shaun Johnson, the enigmatic and mercurial New Zealand Warriors legend, has just announced his retirement. And I'll quickly read from the official New Zealand Warriors website, and the title of the article is End of an Era, Johnson to Retire. It says, one New Zealand Warriors halfback, Shaun Johnson, has called time on his 14-season NRL career, announcing that he'll retire at the end of the season. Johnson, who turns 34 next month, informed his teammates of his decision earlier today before confirming it publicly tonight. This is a decision that I've sat with for a while now, and one that I'm probably still coming to terms with, Johnson said when speaking with his teammates. It's obviously still very raw, but I'm so grateful for the club and you boys who I get to come into work with a smile on my face every day. I've never taken any of it for granted. And this job, that being this season, is not over yet. So let's rip in and get back to doing what we do. But I just wanted to let you all know first that at the end of this season, that'll be me done. So Lewis, as a rugby league fan in general, and obviously more specifically just a Canberra Raiders fan, what are your thoughts on the legacy that Shaun Johnson is leaving, and more to the point of the news that he's announced his retirement just now?
It's a difficult one because as a fan, like I think we were talking about this quite a lot before we started recording. His highlight reel is unmatched in my opinion. If you top up his top 10 plays, starting from the pass to Louis Brown, reversing field against the Broncos, the Rugby League World Cup where he got New Zealand through to beat England in the last second. Even his Dally M performances last season where he should have won over Kalen Ponga, the impact that he's had is unrivaled because he's a different style of half to a lot of the halves coming through. He's just an electric player, but he's also a very complete player. And I think it's just unfortunate that he didn't get that crowning moment in terms of clubland. But yeah, I guess he's done it all in a lot of other ways with New Zealand. So great career. Probably not been the best way to. Hasn't been a champion ending for a champion career, but there's few players that from just genuinely, I guess the best way to put it is, if you were to sit down and say, who would you want to watch on any given day? Like, there's obviously great players out there, but who would you actually want to watch? Shaun Johnson has to be at the top of the list. There's no more excitement because he's actually on the ball a lot, as opposed to just, there's some other guys you can think of like Benny Barber, who had those amazing seasons and so forth, but just the on-ball skill unmatched.
Let me ask you this question. There's some great input there, and I'll ask it with the caveat that there's an extreme risk of recency bias here. But I think we can both acknowledge that it's a genuine question of who is the greatest, or who was the greatest ever New Zealand Warriors halfback, and we can probably both agree that it comes down to either Stacey Jones or Shaun Johnson. Has he surpassed Stacey Jones, or is Stacey Jones still the greatest ever Warriors halfback in your mind?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I think he has. Just on, Stacey Jones was a different type of player, and I think that's what it comes down to. What do you prefer? Stacey Jones is more the classic halfback. Shaun Johnson is the lightning in a bottle type of player. But yeah, you know what? Recency bias would say Shaun Johnson for sure. How about you?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I actually had this debate with the guys over at This Warrior's Life, whose podcast I'll be going on tomorrow. So tune in from YouTube, anyone that likes both our podcasts. And I always thought Shaun Johnson, at least for the last sort of couple of years. I think his longevity is there. The easy criticism is the lack of consistency, but the way that he played, there's no way that you're going to be able to maintain the sort of mirage of consistency that we see. You can't replicate the individual brilliance week to week that we saw from Shaun Johnson. And as a huge Warriors fan, I can say that it's an absolute privilege to be able to watch him play. All but I think 2 years when he went over to Cronulla. It just felt so weird seeing him in a non-Warriors jersey as well during that time. I know, speaking as like an absolute diehard Warriors fan, is my favorite Warriors player, or my favorite player of any club of all time, really. And I think there's daylight second. The way that he speaks about the club, you could tell there's a genuine passion there. For the last few years, he's taken unders to stay with the Warriors. He had a much larger contract offer to join the Roosters just 6 months ago, I think it was. Obviously, the Tigers offered him a lot more money as well. The fact that he had unfinished business with the Warriors is just sort of sad to see that he won't get to realize that unfinished business, because I guess the most recent comparison to what it would mean for Shaun Johnson in terms of a player finally realizing what it means for their club to win their first premiership towards the end of their career would be Paul Gallen winning with the Sharks in 2016, and that being the first and only premiership for the Cronulla Sharks. I was hoping to be able to see that moment replicated, but with Shaun Johnson and the Warriors. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. And you're right, not the ideal way to go out for a club legend. However, it's good to see that off the field he seems in a really, really good place. He's been seems like a very happy man, always smiling for the past couple of years, and I haven't always been able to say that about SJ during some of the more lean times around sort of like 2016, 2017, etc. Any further comments on SJ before we move to our weekly wrap?
I think we talk about this all the time. If you just put another, like, one player in another team, would we look at him differently? And I think SJ, you put him in. The unfortunate part is his prime. He was in an underperforming club, and we didn't get to see the best of SJ when he probably was ready to perform at his best. But his early years, you know what? I think there's no player that can bring that sort of excitement, because he's not a fullback that returns the ball and has broken field play. He's literally at the front at the coal face, literally just bamboozling players. And that, I mean, we talked about it again before. That moment, the Simi fake one way, dummy another way, flick pass, Lewis Brown. Like, you don't really see that anymore, because you just don't. He's just able to take rugby league to places that not many other players can. And I think it's got to do with his touch. Well, it has to do with his touch background. But I hope that with this style of play that's been brought back to the NRL, players like Shaun Johnson will re-emerge. But yeah, I'll say I think he's a once in a generation type of player.
Yeah, I agree.
For
Some of
my
my
praise
favorite
too.
moments. I think it was at the Cape Tin in Wellington when he was playing for Australia, and he tore Australia apart that year. I think down the sort of the tram line on the right hand side stepped a couple of players, then just had GI left to step, and stepped in the complete other direction. Just the showcase of the touch background that you alluded to just then. But that was one of my favorite moments, watching New Zealand beat Australia. And for the record, I am Australian, don't get me wrong, but we all know that Australia winning every single year in international rugby league is part of the issue why it's yet to fully realise its potential. So don't count me as not patriotic, but in that moment, it was just really good to see New Zealand get a win. And I'm sure from an English point of view, which is my background, absolute heartbreak. Yeah, that moment in the semi-final at Wembley where England looked to have the game won, and Shaun Johnson broke about 80,000 hearts in the crowd, and obviously all those watching on TV in England as well. The pass to Louis Brown to get New Zealand through to the NRL Grand Final in 2011. That's probably the standout. I agree with that. That try in Brisbane where he ran the length of the field, corner to corner, but diagonally, with the sort of must have been like 50 steps off the left foot, to score, to start out in the left corner, but score on the right hand side of the goalposts. The highlight reel is, it's a shame that we won't get to keep seeing the highlight reel added to, because I think I've watched the highlight reel of his moments up until sort of like 18 months ago. I think I've watched that at least 50 times over the years. So to know that we won't get another few minutes on that YouTube video, whoever makes it, that's sad to see. But anyway, as much as I would love to, we can't make this entire episode about Shaun Johnson, albeit his career does deserve an entire episode. We are more than just a Warriors podcast. So let's go to our weekly roundup, and we'll start with the NRL. Lou, some amazing action in the NRL. You want to take us through the results?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's the Shaun Johnson, yeah. What a good-looking bloke he was too. And he transcended the game on so many levels. But enough about Shaun Johnson, because I think we'll be tired about him in a minute. We've got the Cowboys 48 over the Tigers 30. Now, I remember you saying the Cowboys don't travel well. They were able to get a good win up over the Tigers. The Eels got a win over the Warriors 30-20. Roosters, high scoring affair, 40 over Dolphins 34. Titans, well, as Desi's onto something here. 46 over the Broncos 18. Dragons are the upset of the round, 18-16 over the Storm. Sharks 20-20 over Rabbitohs 6. Panthers over it was a tough game over the night, 22-14. And the game of the round, which I wouldn't mind talking about a little bit. The Dogs 22 over the Raiders 18. This was a fantastic game of footy. Not always the best skill, but in terms of intensity, water match. And to the latter, we've got the Storm just over the Panthers, 36 points, 34 points. Then we've got the Roosters and Sharks on 30, the Dogs and Cows on 28, the Eagles on 27, and the Dragons with Coach of the Year Shane Flanagan at 8th spot on 26 points.
Yes. That Bulldogs Raiders game was the best game I've seen. I'm going to say in months, but it, like, once again, recency bias, one of the games of the year. For sure, the quality of the game, the back to Belmore element. I could not see one green jersey in the crowd. It was just all blue and white. That bandwagon is on fire right now. The other honourable mention that I really enjoyed watching was that Gold Coast Titans Brisbane Broncos game. And it just shows to see that Gold Coast as a club does have a lot of potential, because it wasn't just Brisbane fans stacking whatever the Seabus Super, I think it's called these days. It was mostly Titans fans in the crowd there, and I think they pretty much sold out. They got 25,278 there. Actually, I'm an attendance buff, so kudos to the Warriors. Obviously, another sellout, just shy of 24,000 people there capacity. Perth has been sold out for a number of weeks. That cracked the 20,000 mark at HBF Park. Titans, I'm pretty sure it was a sellout, 25,278. And then lastly, although not really something to be celebrated given the size of the stadium, but the Sharks was a sellout as well. So 4 sellouts in one round. If you told me that 2 years ago, even, I wouldn't have believed you. But the fact is that that's the norm these days. So it's really, really good to see. But that Gold Coast Titans atmosphere looked absolutely electric. And let me ask you, can the Titans, can they make the 8? It's not impossible.
Having a quick look at the ladder. It's not impossible, but I think they're a bit too inconsistent. I mean, they probably, do you know what? They remind me a little bit of the Dogs last year, where they're losing games that be like, what? How'd that happen? But they're showing enough to be a threat next year, and they've got the right coach to make it happen. Yeah, they're just what's their run home? That's the other question. But I mean, they've got the Sharks next week. That should be tough. They've got Dragons. Okay, so basically, and then they've got the Roosters. Okay, no, they're not making the 8. Sorry, bro.
Uh, I guess my player that I was most impressed with during that game was Keano Keeney. Jaden Campbell as well. Had an absolute standout game. I hadn't really heard of him much at all prior to this game, but Keano Keeney, that sort of wiry little fullback for the Titans. I think it's fair to say that he outshone Reece Walsh, although Reece Walsh had obviously a few good moments in there as well. But Jaden Campbell's really starting to show more than promise. He's starting to be one of the standout players of that whole club. And then just for the Canberra versus Bulldogs game, have you got any standout players?
Yeah, it's painful to well, it's not painful at all because Stephen Crichton is the best player right now in the NRL. What he showed was he when he his first try he pushed off Seb Criff and Rapana, like just buried them both. And then the second, basically all his touches were either powerful. I think he just dropped 140, but that was just because he's trying too much. But ultimately, he set up a brilliant try of this tip kick over the top. I can't remember who scored that one. Was it for the Fox? Oh, I don't know. He scored that, but then he was just everywhere. He was just so good.
There was
And
the
what
Cherry who
he
passed
brings,
the Fox.
yeah, that. Oh. Cherry, on the other hand, I'll focus on Critter. Critter's without doubt the best out in the comp. Probably right now the form player in the comp. You just look at his leadership, man. Like after the game, he's got personalized handshakes with all the boys.
It's incredible.
He's such a respected guy, and he's basically brought that Panthers vibe to the Dogs. But he's personalized it. He's realized that because at the Panthers he grew up with Brian To'o, Jerome Luai, Bentalinu, Taruva. Those are his boys from back in the day type. But now he's obviously around new guys, but instead of him saying, okay, I'll fit in, I'll just sort of play my part and the Dogs carry on their way to, another season of disappointment. He's just taken this club to another level. So much respect for him because there's genuinely nothing he can goal kick as well. I'm surprised that they haven't given him the reins because Burton's not the best kicker either. Like Burton kind of kept the Raiders in it with his kicking. So I mean his goal kicking. So yeah. But I'll give him a big rap and I'll give who's Joe Tarpany. Joe Tarpany was outstanding for the Raiders. He was all week talking about how he wanted to deliver for Papali'i's 300. And there's a few guys that probably didn't play as well as him, but he was outstanding. Any thoughts on
couldn't agree more.
game of the year?
Critter was a man amongst boys yesterday. Well done. I guess. Actually, I did notice Hudson Young. I noticed him quite a lot. I thought he had a really good game at number 11. But anyway, let's move on to the English Super League.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
just on Huddy. Huddy had a great game, but what was he thinking doing a head high on the 5th tackle, game on the line? Like, bro, you got to be smarter than that because we have one shot to get the ball back. Instead, you're just trying to take someone's head off. Like, that's not rugby league. That's not smart rugby league. And I nearly lost it completely. I had to go for a run after it, that is how much it pissed me off. So I just had to get it off my chest. But Hudson had a great game. He actually had a fantastic game. But those are probably the areas that are, when game is on the line, that's when your highlights need to happen, not just random hit ups that make 20 meters. You need to, like with Critter game on the line, he's making those plays. But anyways, shout out Hudson Young, good game.
Yeah, and well done to the Bulldogs. I hear they can't. All the jerseys and all the merchandise has been sold out. Clubs need to make an estimate at the start of the year of how much jerseys and merchandise they think that they will sell that year, and you just can't get your hands on any Bulldogs jerseys or merchandise right now, because apparently to get new ones made, there's about a 3-month delay due to global shipping and this, that, and the other. So anyone with a Bulldogs jersey, if you're prepared to sell it, now's the time. Okay, now let's quickly go through the English Super League. We had Castleford at home going down to Lee Leopards, who are really starting to show some form. We had Wigan at home beating the Huddersfield Giants 28-14. Warrington losing to first, second, Hull KR. So well done to Hull KR. They've taken us all by surprise. Hull FC getting absolutely pumped by St. Helens. I watched that game. Hull FC looked absolutely fucking shit. I'm sorry to say, but the defense, some of those tries were just less than Ron Massey Cup. They were terrible, Hull FC. Salford got one over Brad Arthur's Leeds Rhinos, 22-16. Well done, Salford, and Brodie Croft had a decent game there. And then this is the big upset of the round. London Broncos at home defeating Catalan Dragons. Unfortunately, sad to see Catalan lose as the only French team. But yeah, well done, London. Let's focus on the positives there. Great effort. 12-10. Catalan scored in I think maybe the 72nd minute or something like that, but missed the kick from near the sideline. And ultimately that ended up being the final score. So big news on the ladder front. We have Hull KR now leading the Super League deep into the season on 30 points, equal or head on a for and against, ahead of Wigan. Then in third place on 28 points, Warrington, obviously coached by Sam Burgess. Fourth place is now Salford Red Devils on 26, so that's outright fourth. In fifth and sixth, respectively, on 24 points, St. Helens, who broke their 5-game losing streak, and also Catalan Dragons in sixth. So that rounds out the top 6, and now there's actually a 4-point gap down to 7 and beyond. So we won't go through those sides. All right. Any comments on the Super League before we move on to our final segment?
Right. So, yeah, congratulations to the London Broncos. It was actually breaking news on Sky Sports over here, such as the earth-shattering that they've only won 2 games this season. And Hull KR, I'm just looking quickly. Do you know what their best ever finish is in terms of ladder in the Super League since 2007? What do you think is the highest they've ever finished?
Fourth, maybe?
They finished fourth twice, once in 2009 and last year 2023 they came fourth as well. So they well, actually they made third based on the qualifiers after the in 2018. But in terms of just straight ladder, fourth position. So this is actually, because the Super League is generally a top 3 race. You've got St. Helens, Wigan, and Leeds, and back in the day Bradford.
Well, let's move on to our final segment. I think this is a bit of a fun one, and references as a threat to my masculinity. I'll still say this. Anyone that's seen the film, the chick flick Notting Hill, where they're going around the table about who gets the last brownie, it's awarded to the person with the most miserable existence at that table. I thought it'd be fun to do a similar rugby league, or specifically an NRL thought process with you, Lou. Who's the most difficult team in the NRL to follow? Now, I'm gonna pair teams up, and I want a very brief explanation as to why you're making the decision. So let's start with: is it harder to be a fan of Penrith or Melbourne?
You caveat this in terms of the last 30 years or literally say 10 years. What type of time frame are we looking at?
Yeah, let's go sort of 1990 and beyond.
All right. I think it's harder to go for Penrith. Now, I'll quickly say Storm came in at 98, and I don't think they've ever had a bad season. So that they're coming first right now, literally, and people will probably saying, "Oh, it's been a tough year for them."
All right, next one is North Queensland versus New Zealand Warriors. Both came in the comp in 1995. Who's harder to follow?
I think the War. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, the fact that the Cowboys have won one and the Warriors haven't, yeah, obviously I'm biased, but it's an incredibly painful existence following them, so I can endorse that. Roosters versus Broncos. So Roosters or Broncos?
Oh, probably the Roosters.
Roosters
The
are
only reason
harder
I say
to follow?
Roosters is the Broncos, if we look at the last 30 years, they've how many comps have they won? They were so competitive in the 90s. They are the glamour club still. Um, yeah. Well, who have you picked?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go Roosters because we're going back to that golden sort of Gordon Tallis, Alfie Langer era. Darren Lockyer, the Broncos. Yeah, they've had probably more regular success or similar regular success, but such a big club. Yeah, Roosters slightly harder, although both teams would be pretty good to follow. Souths or Bulldogs?
Oh, now the reason why is they actually didn't have a team to support for a little bit. They were all like Craig Coleman, Owen Craigie. Like, no offense to them, but that was their star power for a long time. Then you look at
Brian Fletcher.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah. Who so, and yeah, I think it has to be the Rabbitohs. What about you?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And for those disagreeing, I accuse you of recency bias. Yes, it's been a horrendous 10 years since the Bulldogs were any good. But the reality is you made the grand final in what, 2012 and 2014. And it's been a pretty decent existence. You know, you had the win in 2000 and what, 2003, I think, or 2004. One of those years. And generally speaking, it's a big club that's had more regular success over the last 30 years than Souths, I think. All right, Gold Coast or the Dolphins?
You'd have to think that you'd have to think that the Titans. The fact that they promise so much, don't they? They always have a decent playing roster and play like shit. So it's yeah, at least the Dolphins look really promising, but that's an asterisk right there actually. How about you?
Yeah, I'll go the Titans because there's a longer history of just poo, basically. The Dolphins, you know, you're still in that honeymoon phase where you're optimistic. So it'd be fun being a Dolphins fan, I reckon, compared to a Titans fan. Next one is Tigers versus the Eels.
Oh, sorry, just on the Titans, the center of excellence says it all. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
The,
yeah.
yeah,
Michael
that,
Searle.
yeah, that was, and then they ended up having to train out of a private school somewhere in the Gold Coast, because they fucked up too much. Let's see.
Tigers Eels is a hard one.
Oh, it's a hard one because at least the Eels have been okay. The Tigers have won a comp in the last 30 years, but I think you take away that comp, the Eels have been to multiple grand finals. They are competitive generally. They just haven't won a comp. So I'll say the Tigers.
Tigers. That's one that I would go the other way, and the reason being is the way they lost the 2001 grand final after having the most dominant season, heartbreaking. And the fact is that they're the longest club without a premiership, going all the way back to I think 1986 or something like that. Warriors and Cowboys, etc. They weren't around back then. So anyway, we'll go with the Tigers because this is you on the spot here, not me. Next one is your Raiders or the Cronulla Sharks.
I think the Raiders. I think like I'm a Raiders fan based on what I saw as a 5-year-old, or as a 4-year-old. If I try to jump on the bandwagon now, people will be wondering why. The Raiders are a competitive side, but you know, like every Raiders and non-Raiders fan knows just how hard it is to recruit. You're not going to ever get a Darren Lockyer signing down there. And the Sharks, on the other hand, you know, they have a lot going for them. They were the perennial underperformance for a long time. They won a comp recently. They look good under Fitzgibbons. So there's not really that many dark spots, so to speak, with their history apart from not winning a comp.
All right, moving on. Because there's an odd number here, I'm going to throw three in this. And who's the hardest to follow out of these three? The Dragons, the Sea Eagles, or the Knights?
Got to be the Knight. The other two, yeah, the other two have won comps more recently, a bit more competitive somewhat recently. Yeah, it's got to be the Knight.
Okay, cool. We're down to our top 8 of hardest teams to follow. So in quarterfinal number 1, is it harder to follow Penrith or the Warriors?
Oh, the Warriors.
Yeah, that's a fucking easy one. Is it harder to follow Roosters or Souths?
Yeah.
Yeah, agree. These ones are a bit easier. Is it harder to follow the Gold Coast or the West Tigers?
Like Tigers. Poor Tigers, man.
Titans, you said?
So Tigers.
Tigers. Okay, and lastly, the Raiders or the Knights?
Ooh, probably the Raiders.
All right, we're into our semi-finals. Is it harder to follow Warriors or Souths?
Wow. Was this geared towards having you?
Oh, we going the Warriors Raiders here? Oh, the bias is impressive, isn't it? Oh, we got the Warriors in the grand final. Is Tigers or Raiders harder to follow?
I want to say the Tigers. Okay, again, you take away that comp, they have, and they still have the stench of the Magpies. The Magpies, if you want to look at terrible performances, so the West Tigers will. There's no recency bias here. They can't even make the 8 at any year.
It's been like, it's coming up on 15 years, not even making the 8. I'm not talking about winning a premiership. All right.
No,
In our grand final of most difficult NRL teams to follow, we have the New Zealand Warriors versus the West Tigers. Ironically, the game that was the last finals game that the Tigers played was between the Warriors and the Tigers when Kristen Inu scored with his hands behind his ball behind the shoulder on the ground there. Who's harder to follow, the Warriors or the Tigers?
Warriors.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The hardest team to follow in the NRL are the New Zealand Warriors. You heard it here first. Well, let's very, very quickly, because we are short of time here, go through our tips. So, for the NRL, that is, so on Thursday, we have South Sydney hosting Melbourne Storm. Who have you got for that one?
You know what? I'm going for the upset, Rabbitohs.
Storm don't lose twice in a row. I'm going to go the Storm for that one. This one, for me, surprisingly, the Friday 6 p.m. game, up there with the game of the, if not the game of the round, Gold Coast versus Sharks.
Titans.
Yeah, I'm going Titans as well. Friday 8 p.m. Oh, this is a cracker as well. Actually, it's not really. It's a derby, but it's always a good game. Parramatta hosting Penrith.
And Panthers should win the season very easily.
Yeah, Penrith. Canberra hosting Manly.
Whoa, game of the round. The team of destiny should get this one, the Raiders, over the Manly Eagles. It'll be a tough one there.
Yeah, it'd be a tough one. I'm inclined to go the Raiders as well. Queensland Derby here. I think this one's sold out. North Queensland versus Brisbane Broncos.
It should be a good game, the Cows.
Yeah, Cows for me as well. Dragons versus Bulldogs. This is actually the game of the round. Scrap everything I said up until now. It's a sold-out Cogra Oval, which is the first time I've been able to say that in many years, I think. Dragons, Bulldogs. Saturday night in Cogra. Who have you got?
I think the dogs look good to me. They look well coached. They they're not that well coached, but they got a great attitude. So yeah, dogs to win.
For the sake of going someone different, I'm going to go the Dragons because I think it could go either way, this one. And second last game, Dolphins versus Warriors, with the Dolphins being the home team.
Dolphins need this. The Dolphins should win. Warriors got nothing to play for. Yeah, just doesn't seem like the type of game the Warriors win.
We've got SJ to play for, but moving on. Newcastle versus the West Tigers, Sunday afternoon up in the Hunter. Geez, that's a classic style of game. Newcastle, Tigers, Hunter, sunny afternoon. Well, hopefully. Who have you got?
Surely the Knights win. The Tigers, they're just awful, aren't they? There's just nothing there for them. There's nothing there. I'm sorry, bro. Stefano gone. Jerome needs to come sooner.
Yep, I'm inclined to agree. So let's leave it there for another episode of Everything Rugby League. Just for those listening, if you could subscribe to the podcast. We're obviously in a growth phase. We're still at the beginnings of what we hope to be quite a successful podcast. And in the near future, we hope to introduce some interview content as well, which will differ from our usual Monday night weekend recap episodes like we've just had. And we'll be releasing them. We'll aim to release them when we have them on Thursday nights. So if you could like and share, etc., your support means more than you realize. Anyway, for all those, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Everything Rugby League. If you like this episode, give the show a follow and leave a review. For more news and insights, follow us on Facebook or head to everythingrugbyleague.com.